I never thought my snowplow would become the most controversial piece of equipment in Meadowbrook Heights, Minnesota, but Karen Hutchkins made sure of that within my first winter in the neighborhood. The whole mess started on a crisp November morning when I was out clearing me driveway after the first decent snowfall of the season. I had just moved into the subdivision outside of Rochester 3 months earlier, and I was genuinely excited about my new John Deere plow attachment. Growing up in northern Minnesota, I learned early that a good snowplow was worth its weight in gold during the brutal winters. My father had taught me how to operate one when I was 16, and now at 34, I took pride in maintaining my own equipment. I was halfway through clearing my driveway when I noticed a white Lexus pulling up to the curb. A woman in her mid-50s stepped out, wearing a puffy winter coat that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her blonde hair was styled in that specific way that screamed she had a standing appointment at an expensive salon. She marched across my front lawn, leaving footprints in the fresh snow, and planted herself directly in front of my plow. I killed the engine and climbed down from the cab, figuring she was a neighbor coming to introduce herself. I was wrong. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the cold air. "I am Karen Hutchkins, president of the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association, and I need to speak with you about that monstrosity you are operating." I looked back at my perfectly maintained snowplow, then back at her. "Why snowplow? Is there a problem?" "A problem?" She let out a laugh that had no humor in it. "That industrial equipment is completely inappropriate for a residential neighborhood. It is loud, unsightly, and quite frankly, it lowers the aesthetic value of our community. I am going to have to insist that you cease and desist immediately." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Mrs. Hutchkins, with all due respect, I need to clear mid-driveway. We just got 8 inches of snow, and I have to get to work. Then hire a professional snow removal service like everyone else in this neighborhood." She snapped, "Or use a snow blower, a hand shovel even. But that industrial plow has got to go." "I am not breaking any laws," I replied, keeping my voice level. "This is me property, and I have every right to maintain it as I see fit." Her eyes narrowed into slits. "Everything in this neighborhood falls under HOA jurisdiction. Mr. Brennan, Jake Brennan. Mr. Brennan, you signed the HOA covenant when you purchase your home. That gives us authority over what you can and cannot do on your property. I will be sending you a formal cease and desist letter by the end of the day. If you continue to operate that plow, you'll face daily fines of $200. She turned on her heel and walked back to her Lexus, leaving me standing there in disbelief. I had read through the HOA documents when I bought the house, but I did not remember anything about snowplows. Then again, the covenant was about 70 pages long, written in dense legal language that could put anyone to sleep. That evening, true to her word, I found an official-looking letter in my mailbox. It cited Section 14, Paragraph 8 of the HOA covenant, which stated that no commercial or industrial equipment shall be operated on residential properties, except by licensed contractors during reasonable hours. The letter demanded that I immediately stop using my snowplow or face escalating fines and potential legal action. I sat at my kitchen table reading through my copy of the HOA covenant with a fine-tooth comb. The section she cited was clearly meant to prevent people from running actual businesses out of their homes, but Karen was twisting it to suit her agenda. The more I read, the angrier I got. I had spent $15,000 on this house's snowplow setup, and I was not about to let some power-hungry HOA president tell me I could not use it. The next morning, I decided to call a lawyer, my buddy from college, Marcus, practiced real estate law in Minneapolis, and he agreed to look over my documents. 3 days later, he called me back with good news. "Jake, she is reaching. Marcus said that clause is about commercial operations. You are not running a snow removal business. You are maintaining your own property with your own equipment. Unless the covenant specifically prohibits snowplows, which it does not, she has no legal ground to stand on, so I can keep using it." "Absolutely. But here is the thing. These HOA disputes can get messy. Even if you are legally in the right, she can make your life difficult with constant complaints and frivolous fines at MY Advice. Send her a formal response from a lawyer, which I will draft for you, and then document everything. Every time you use the plow, every interaction with the HOA, everything that I took his advice. The letter went out the following week politely but firmly explaining that I was within my rights to use my snowplow, and that any further harassment would result in legal action against the HOA for overreach. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong again. Karen responded by calling an emergency HOA board meeting. She sent out notices to all the residents claiming that I was defying community standards and creating a dangerous precedent. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening in the community clubhouse, and I made sure to attend. The clubhouse was packed when I arrived. Apparently, Karen had rallied quite a few supporters, mostly older residents who seemed to think my snowplow was somehow going to destroy property values. I recognized a few of my neighbors who gave me sympathetic looks, but they stayed quiet. Karen stood at the front of the room behind a podium, looking like she was about to address Congress. The other board members sat at a table beside her. Richard Morton, the treasurer, who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Susan Palmer, the secretary, who nodded along with everything Karen said. And David Chun, a board member who actually seemed to be paying attention. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Karen began. We are here to address a serious issue that threatens the character of our neighborhood. Mr. Brennan has refused to comply with our cease and desist order regarding his industrial snowplow. This is not just about one resident's equipment. This is about maintaining the standards that make Meadowbrook Heights the premier subdivision in Rochester. Someone in the back shouted their agreement. I raised my hand. Yes, Mr. Brennan, Karen said, her tone dripping with false politeness. I stood up. I would like to know exactly which rule I am breaking. My lawyer reviewed the covenant, and there is nothing that prohibits me from using a snowplow on my own property for personal use. The covenant clearly states that commercial and industrial operations are prohibited. I interrupted. I am not running a business. I am clearing my own driveway. There is a significant difference. David Chin leaned forward. He has a point, Karen. That clause is about commercial operations, Dot. If he is just maintaining his property, I do not see how we can. The spirit of the rule is what matters. Karen cut in. We cannot have residents operating heavy machinery whenever they feel like it. What is next? Someone decides to park a scimitar in their driveway. Someone sets up an excavator to dig a pool. Those are false equivalences. I said a snowplow is standard equipment for property maintenance in Minnesota. Half the people in this room probably have riding lawnmowers, which are also considered machinery. Should we ban those too? That got a few murmurs of agreement from the crowd. Karen's face was turning red. This is exactly the kind of disrespect I am talking about, she said. Mr. Brennan clearly has no regard for this community or its standards. I move that we implement a new rule specifically prohibiting the use of personal snowplows in Meadowbrook Heights. You cannot just make up rules because one person is doing something you do not like. I argued. We can implement new rules as the board sees fit. Karen shot back. All in favor. Susan Palmer's hand shot up immediately. Richard Morton hesitated, then slowly raised his. David Chen kept his hand down. The motion passes, Karen announced. Effective immediately. Personal snowplows are prohibited in Meadowbrook Heights. Mr. Brennan, you will receive an updated notice tomorrow morning. Any violations will result in a $200 daily fine. I left that meeting furious. This was not just about the snowplow anymore. This was about Karen exercising power for the sake of power. I called Marcus again that night. She cannot do that, can she? I asked. Well, technically HOAs do have the authority to implement new rules, Marcus explained. But there are procedures they have to follow. They need to give proper notice, allow for a comment period, and the rule has to be reasonable. Banning snowplows in Minnesota is arguably unreasonable. Did she follow proper procedure? She called an emergency meeting and had them vote on it immediately. That is your angle. They did not follow proper procedure. I can draft another letter explaining that the rule change is invalid. But Jake, I hate to tell you, these fights can get expensive. HOAs have legal funds for this kind of thing. Are you prepared for a potentially long battle? I thought about it. I thought about my dad teaching me to plow snow in our old driveway up in Baiji. I thought about the principle of the thing about not letting bullies win just because they had a title and a gavel. Yeah, I said, I am prepared. The letter went out and I continued using my snowplow. Every time it snowed, I cleared my driveway, and every time I did, I received another fine notice from the HOA. I documented everything, taking photos and videos, keeping every piece of correspondence. The fines added up quickly. $200 a day whenever I use a plow. Within a month, they claimed I owed the mover $3,000. December arrived with typical Minnesota fury. We got hit with storm after storm, and I dutifully cleared my driveway after each one. My neighbors started to notice something interesting. My driveway was always clear within an hour off the snow stopping, while everyone else was waiting for professional snow removal services that Karen insisted everyone use. Those services were overwhelmed, often taking a full day or more to get to people's houses. One morning, my neighbor Tom Radcliffe knocked on my door. He was in his late 60s, a retired engineer who had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. "Jake, I have been watching this whole thing with the HOA," he said. "I think what Karen is doing is ridiculous. It wanted you to know that a bunch of us are planning to attend the next board meeting to support you." "I appreciate that, Tom," I said, "but I do not want to cause problems for everyone else." "You are not causing problems. Karen is. She has been drunk on power ever since she became president 3 years ago. Someone needs to stand up to her, and I am glad it is you." That conversation lifted my spirits more than he knew. Over the next week, several other neighbors stopped by to express their support. Apparently, Karen's iron-fisted approach to HOA management had rubbed a lot of people the wrong way over the years, and my snowplow dispute was becoming a rallying point for general frustration. The next board meeting was scheduled for mid-December. I showed up with Marcus, who agreed to attend as my legal representation. Tom and about a dozen other neighbors came too, which was apparently unheard of for a regular HOA meeting. Karen looked surprised when she saw the crowd, but she quickly composed herself. "Well, this is quite the turnout. Let us begin with the usual business. First, the treasurer's report. I would like to address the snowplow ban." I interrupted. Karen's jaw tightened. "That is not on the agenda." "Then I would like to add it to the agenda," I said. "Or do residents not have the right to raise issues at board meetings?" Davidson spoke up. "Actually, Karen, the bylaws do allow for residents to bring up new business." I think we should hear him out. Karen looked like she had just bitten into a lemon. "Fine, Mr. Brennan, you have 5 minutes. Marcus stood up instead. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I am Mr. Brennan's legal counsel. I am here to inform the board that the snowplow ban implemented last month I assembled for several reasons. First, proper procedure was not followed. The bylaws require a 30-day notice period before any new. Rules can be voted on along with a comment period for residents. None of that happened. Second, the ban is unreasonable and arbitrary. Snowplows are standard equipment for property maintenance in Minnesota. Banning them serves no legitimate purpose and actually harms residents by forcing them to rely on third-party services during a time when those services are completely overwhelmed. The ban is about maintaining community standards. Karen argued, community standards are not violated by a resident maintaining their property. Marcus countered. Furthermore, we are prepared to file a lawsuit against the HOA for harassment, overreach, and violation of its own bylaws. Mr. Brennan has documented extensive evidence of the board's improper conduct. I strongly suggest that the board rescind this ban immediately before this becomes a costly legal matter. The room went silent. Richard Morton shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Susan Palmer looked at Karen for guidance. David Chin was nodding slowly. "I agree with the lawyer." "David," said Karen, "we rushed this through without following proper procedure. We need to rescind it." "We will do no such thing." Karen snapped. "This is about maintaining order and standards. If we back down now, what kind of precedent does that set?" Tom Radcliffe stood up. "Karen, I have been in this neighborhood for 15 years. I have watched you turn this HOA into your personal thief. You fine people for having their garbage cans visible from the street. You sent violation notices to the Johnsons because their Christmas lights were the wrong color. You tried to ban kids from playing basketball in their own driveways because the noise annoyed you. Enough is enough. We are not your subjects. We are homeowners who pay HOA dues for legitimate services, not so you can play dictator." Several people applauded. Karen's face turned purple. How dare you?" she hissed. "I have devoted countless hours to improving this neighborhood. Everything I do is for the benefit of this community." "Then prove it," I said. "Rescind the ban. Admit you overreached. Show us that you actually care about what is fair and right, not just about asserting control." For a moment, I thought she might actually explode. Instead, she grabbed her papers, stuffed them into her bag, and stormed out of the meeting. We all sat there in stunned silence. Davidson cleared his throat. "Well, as the acting chair in Karen's absence, I move that we rescind the snowplow ban on the grounds that proper procedure was not followed. All in favor?" 3 hands went up. David's, Richard's, and surprisingly Susan's. "The motion passes," David said, "MR. Brennan, I apologize for this whole mess. You are free to use your snowplow without penalty. We will also void all the fines that were assessed." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thank you. I appreciate that." The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. Several neighbors came up to congratulate me and Marcus. Tom shook my hand vigorously. "You did good, kid. Someone needed to put her in her place." I thought that was the end of it. The ban was lifted, the fines were voided, and life could go back to normal. But I underestimated just how vindictive Karen Hutchkins could be. 2 days after meeting, I received a call from the Rochester Police Department. Apparently, Karen had filed a complaint claiming that I had been threatening her. The officer on the phone sounded skeptical, but he asked me to come down to the station to give a statement. It brought Marcus with me, and we spent an hour explaining the entire situation to a detective named Sarah Williams. I showed her all my documentation, the letters, the meeting minutes, everything. She listened carefully, taking notes. "So, let me get this straight," Detective Williams said. "You have never threatened Mrs. Hutchkins in any way." "Never." I confirmed. "Every interaction I have had with her has been documented. My lawyer has been present for several of them. I have witnesses to everything. And she has been fining you for using a snowplow on your own property." "That is correct until the board meeting 2 days ago when Theben was rescinded." Detective Williams sat back in her chair. "Mr. Brennan, I am going to be honest with you. This sounds like a civil dispute that has nothing to do with criminal law. Mrs. Hutchkins seems to be misusing the police department to harass you. I am going to note in my report that there is no evidence of any criminal activity on your part. If she continues to file false reports, she could be charged with making false statements to police." That was reassuring, but it also showed me just how far Karen was willing to go. Over the next few weeks, life in Meadowbrook Heights became increasingly tense. Karen apparently resigned as HOA president after the meeting, but she was still living in the neighborhood, and she made sure to glare at me every time our paths crossed. December turned into January, and the Minnesota winter showed no signs of letting up. The Weather Service started warning about a major blizzard system moving in from the Dakotas. They were predicting up to 2 feet of snow over a 48-hour period with winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour. It was going to be one of the worst storms in years. I spent the day before the storm preparing. I made sure my snowplow was in perfect working order, stocked up on fuel, and filled my pantry with supplies. My neighbors were doing the same, though most of them were relying on professional snow removal services to handle the aftermath. The storm hit on a Friday night with a vengeance. The wind howled like a living thing, and the snow came down so thick you could not see more than a few feet in front of you. I watched from my living room window as the drifts piled higher and higher. By Saturday morning, the entire neighborhood was buried under nearly 20 inches of snow, and it was still coming down. I knew I could not plow until the storm actually stopped, because the wind would just fill everything back in within minutes. So I waited, monitoring the weather reports. The storm finally began to taper off Saturday evening, leaving behind a winter wonderland that was beautiful and completely impassable. Sunday morning, it got up early and fired up my snowplow. The sun was just starting to rise, casting an orange glow over the buried neighborhood. I started with my own driveway, carefully clearing a path from my garage to the street. The snow was heavy and wet, perfect packing snow, and it took me about an hour to finish. When I was done, I looked around at the neighborhood. Every driveway was completely blocked. Several cars were